Hello, everyone. Hope you're having a great day. Some of you probably more than others. um, yeah, so recently, you probably all are aware, we recently went through yesterday a mass, a future culling of quite a few Age of Sigmar models come the new edition. Perfectly honest, this is probably one of the biggest discontinuation announcements I've seen in a very long time. Like the only ones that in my memory even come to mind would probably be the Great Space Marine Purge of early last year, and probably from the change up to Warhammer Fantasy to Age of Sigmar. Like they just cut everything. Well, not everything, but just so much was removed. And I honestly, I wasn't actually sure if I even wanted to cover this because I realized this is a very touchy subject for a lot of people. And I've seen online that, yeah, a lot of people are, I would say, even justifiably angry that some people's entire armies are just about to be entering legends. And I know a bunch of people are going to say, well, you can always still use legends, but, like, come on, guys. Like, legends is only so you only takes you so far. Like, we all know what they really mean by legends. Anyway, let's just begin. So with so basically what exactly happened here? Well, basically what's happening is that Age of Sigmar is going through what is probably the biggest change up probably since the original inception of the game. And GW is obviously taking this opportunity to remove a bunch of models from the game because, well, this is probably the best time to do it because, well, think about it. They're discontinuing all the books, they're changing up all the war scrolls. Obviously, they feel that this is the easiest way to do it because if they're removing the books already, they don't have to worry about invalidating books they sold. War scrolls are going anyway, so they don't have to worry about, they're updating their apps because they're updating everything. Um, so what's happening is that we're like Stormcasts, and I would say Stormcasts, Beasts of Chaos, and Slaves of Darkness are probably has the most things affected, but other aspects of the game is too. Like Stormcast are losing a bunch of models in a sub faction. Beasts of Chaos are just going to be gone. Bone Splitters are being removed. Slaves of Darkness is getting a big culling, and a bunch of other minor models here and there are going. Obvious takers, like the spider, like the big, like the Spider Fang Big Boss on Giant Spider. They're getting rid of all the fine cast stuff. Um, so there's been a lot of talk lately, especially online, about how this is not a good look for GW, especially because, as people point out, some of the models being released are actually relatively new. Like case in point, some of the models that are are being discontinued from the game are not even 2 years old. Like, some people feel that GW should not be removing models this early from the game, especially when they kept models in the game for literal decades. And honestly, I do see a legitimate argument for that. So let's just get into more detail of the specifics. So, Stormcast Eternals. Well, what are we losing? Well, we're losing the entire Sankersank range, and we're pretty much losing every single first edition Stormcast model. Um, Now, out of all of them, I think this is probably the most justified calling of a range in the game. And by that, I think that because no one can really argue that the Stormcast Eternal range wasn't bloated. Like, quite frankly, Stormcast Eternals, it just had so many units in it, it was insane. Like, I think Stormcast Eternals had more heroes than most armies have in their entire armies. Like they had like 20, 30 heroes, some of which I don't even think you can get anymore. Like they had like 6 or 7 foot infantry. They had like 3 or 4 foot range units. They had like 4 different kinds of cavalry. Like how I don't even know how many wizards they have, at least 4 or 5. Like there was just so many units and just so much redundancy that that quite frankly, that even though Stormcast Eternals had like 70 units, probably more than 70, so many of them never got played because GW just couldn't find a way to balance them properly. Like case in point, like when I think as of this day, I don't think I've ever played or seen someone use the majority of the Vanguard chamber. So I understand why they would want to call certain units in the range. Plus, on top of all that, they've outright stated they're updating many of the first edition models. Like case in point, the Liberators are going to be phased out and replaced with updated Liberators. And a lot of the first edition units they're removing, such as probably like the Judicators and the Lord Veritant, they're probably going to be updated with new units as well. And in fact, they're even getting a whole new chamber, the Ruination Chamber. So not only are they updating units, they're getting a new chamber. Having said that, I'm a little bit confused why they chose to remove the Sacrosanct Chamber, because they're relatively new. I think they're only like 6 years old, and in addition to that, I don't know exactly the numbers, but I don't think they were the least selling range of the Stormcast Eternals. Like in fact, like just the Sacrosanct alone is going to be taking away so many different units. Like I thought if they were going to cut anything, they would have cut like some of the smaller ones, like maybe like just take out like maybe just legend some of the first edition heroes that they didn't really use, or maybe just take out some members of the Vanguard Chamber. But no, they're cutting all of the Sacrosanct, and I have a theory for this actually. My theory is that the reason they're cutting the Sacrosanct is because, well, one, they're probably not selling as much anymore. They need to make room for the Ruination Chamber, but I think that they're actually going to update the range down the road, because they mentioned in the article that, oh well, they're the reason they're going is they're leaving the front lines. They're going back to Azir to work on the cure. Like that's a very easy lore explanation for why they're not in the game as much, but it also leaves them the room in the future for them to come back. Like, oh, okay, well, we need you to join the fight again. Come back. Um, my so that's why my theory is that we're not seeing the end of them forever, but we are going to be seeing them. This is the last we're going to be seeing them until they get the next big update. Like case in point, third edition for Stormcast Eternals didn't really see a new chamber added. We really just saw like major additions to like the Warrior Chamber and the Extremist Chamber, I believe, like with the new dragons. So I think probably either late fourth edition or maybe early fifth edition, whenever that comes out in like 2-3 years, we're going to see an updated model range for the Sacrosanct Chamber. Um, so out of even though and admittedly yes, a lot of people are salty right now and justifiably so. I think this one has the most justification for what they did, because I just don't feel that Stormcast could have gotten any bigger. They had to be reduced in size because it was becoming unwieldy. It was probably expensive to market and to hold space for all those models. And quite frankly, is just no one I think could really even collect all those models. Like there was just so many that I think many aren't even into circulation anymore. That so many units just languished on store stops, because when you have that many units, inevitably, especially for new players, you have to just chase the meta because you can't collect everything. So you have to collect the stuff that's good. So a lot of stuff that wasn't good, it just rotted on the vine. So yeah, it sucks, but this one is probably the most justifiable. Skaven, as for them, I'm honestly not going to talk too much about them because this is pretty obvious. It's basically everything, at least most of the stuff I said about Stormcast applies to them. Their range is getting huge. It's probably one of the biggest ranges, along with like Stormcast Eternals and Slaves to Darkness. A lot of these models are freaking ancient. Like I'm pretty certain that they have models in this line that are older than some countries. Like when did Yugoslavia break up? I'm pretty sure there's some models here that was before that. Um, like yeah, like some of these models just quite frankly were screaming to be updated, because it's honestly getting a little bit jarring seeing the older Skaven models against the newer ones. It really is like 80s cartoony versus the more modern realistic. So yeah, and on top of that, too, Skaven obviously, as mentioned, Skaven are the new poster boys well, not poster boys, but they're going to be the new big bad opening up fourth edition Age of Sigmar. So they're obviously getting a new range refresh. So a lot of those units, quite frankly, even some of the ones that don't look too bad, like the Clan Rats and the Master Molder, those are even the Arch Warlock. They're all getting discontinued. Obviously, they're going to be replaced with updated versions. And also, they're also making, and as I said, they're also using this opportunity with the game getting shaken up to remove some of these ancient looking artillery pieces because again, they're getting updated. Like for example, if you pay attention to that advertisement back when fourth edition was first revealed, I think you could actually see the updates to like the rattling gun and the new clan rats. So yeah, though this really is a no brainer. There's just look the new edition, new models inbound, just finally phasing out the old ones that everyone's sick of looking at. So, Bone Splitters, however, this one is a little bit more complex because, yeah, they're just being because one thing about them is that with all the others, at least with the other two I just mentioned, they're losing a lot of models, but at least I could see the justification for them. They're big, they're either too big and they need to be cut down, or their models are getting too ancient, they have to be replaced. It is what it is. Um, Bone Splitters, however, they're being removed entirely from Orc War Clans, which I think is really unfortunate because this means Orc War Clans is losing an entire sub faction, and there's no news if they're getting a replacement. Like, okay, well, if they're losing War Clans, but is there a new grouping of orcs coming to Orc War Clans to replace them, or is it just going to be the Iron Jaws and Cruel Boy party from now on? Because remember, some people might remember Orc War Clans when it started, all it was just Iron Jaws and Bone Splitters, but now it looks like it's turning into Iron Jaws and Cruel Boys now. So personally, I hope that's not the case because I think books need at least three sub factions. I feel to have a proper mix of like different play styles because Bone Splitters basically brought like the all cavalry and the mass range infantry to the greater Orc war clans, which we're losing now. Um, and another thing is too, unlike what I was also expecting was okay, if you are going to discontinue them, fine. I kind of get it from an objective standpoint. Like they're older models, they haven't really gotten any updates. They probably don't sell great as at least not as much as some of the other Orc War Clan sub factions. But I was assuming they would just be sent to Old World. But from what it looks like, it doesn't appear there's any evidence they're going to be just shifted over to Old World. Because all they really mentioned is just going to be going straight to Legends, and I'm not quite like I'm just kind of wondering was there a reason for that? Like I kind of assumed like the general strategy is that they discontinue. Sorry, there's something in the background. There's always something going on. Uh, there's there like generally speaking, when they phase out the older models from Age of Sigmar, they simply what they really are doing is just moving them to Old World so they can essentially resell them again. Because out of all the Orc war clans currently in existence, Bone Splitter's probably most fit in the older setting more than any of the others. So I'm kind of wondering what this entails. Are they just removing bone splitters completely, or is this meaning like they're just removing them for now, but because they're going to update them in the future? Like, are we going to be getting them reintroduced with updated models? Are we going to I don't know what's going on here because I actually didn't see this coming because they actually did get a new unit with Headwrecker's Mad Mob, an Underworld's Warband. And generally speaking, I kind of found that with any army that got at least specialist game updates where I thought they'd generally be staying. And I thought that then this would lead to like the rest of the range getting updated, like to be more similar to what the Mad Mob looked like. But no, it's going to. So, my theory on in this regard then is that I think they were initially planning to keep Bone Splitters, but I think behind the scenes, I think there's been some executive decision making going on, and they've just decided that with the change up to the game, they would rather just cut, quite frankly, a much older model line that isn't really selling as much anymore, to make room for newer model ranges for the Orc War clans. Like, I don't think it's just going to be Iron Jaws and Cruel Boys forever. I think they're going to introduce a newer third option to replace the Bone Splitters, if not just an updated Bone Splitters. But we're going to have to see what happens, because as of this moment, we don't know if they're going into Old World, because it looks like they're not. Slaves to Darkness. I'm less surprised that they're getting called. I'm just more surprised what they're calling. Like, I always assumed that we were going to, like, all those, like, those Chaos Marauders, those Chaos Marauder Horsemen, all those kind of units. Those would have been the ones taken out, and they were just going to be repackaged for Old World, because they already are. However, just for case in point, right here, they've already let us know those units are going. Those were revealed back in Adepticon, I think, when they revealed the Dark Oath. But what they're actually saying is that we are actually losing all the cultists, or sorry, most of the cultists. So see, this is a little bit surprising to me, because, as some people have pointed out, some of these models are relatively new. Like, case in point, the Horns of a Shut are not even 2 years old, and again, I do understand, like, at least objectively speaking, why they're doing this. Like, again, Slaves to Darkness is one of the biggest ranges out of all of Age of Sigmar, almost as big as, like, Stormcast Eternals in some way. They obviously are adding new units to the range. There's probably going to be more units added come along, and, like, the cultists alone are adding like 10 whole war scrolls to the army, plus Karga's Ravengers and Underworld's Warband. That's 11. So you cut all those out, great. You just reduce the range by 11, and now you've got 11 more slots you can fill up with future releases. So this I understand from an intellectual perspective. Now some people are actually wondering, like, if you were going to cut them this quickly, why did you even put them in the first place? Well, that's a very good question people are asking, and I think I know the answer. Uh, like, at least when these were first introduced, I think they still didn't know what Slaves of Darkness was going to be going forward. Like, I think my theory is actually that they weren't actually necessarily going to introduce a generic Marauder anymore. I think maybe they were going to do is they were just going to make Marauders just be these guys. Like, these are the new Marauders. Like, every realm had its own unique chaos flavor of Marauder. Um, and also because their current range was so old, they had to introduce newer models to be the foot infantry. And they thought, okay, well, we have all these Warcry warbands, let's just shove them in there. However, now that they have a whole new set of Dark Oath coming in, obviously they want to push more favor onto them. So discontinue these from the games. You encourage people to buy the new stuff. This has been the tale as old as time with GW. In addition to this is also kind of enforcing a theory I've had, in that GW, especially recently, seems to want to separate their model lines more than ever before. Like, case in point, like, we saw some of this with, like, they were discontinuing the use of, like, say, like, Horus Heresy units in 40k proper. Like, a lot of those war scrolls just became like legends. And then recently, as we've seen with, like, Old World and Age of Sigmar, they've seemed to be going out of their way to make the two model ranges separate from each other. Like, a lot of people assumed that there'd be a lot of, like, compatibility. Like, oh well, I can use this model in Age of Sigmar and Old World. No, 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 no. Quite the opposite. They don't. They're going out of their way to make every single game system completely separate from each other with their own model ranges. So I think, now, I don't actually know what's going on with these first edition Warcry units. They didn't really say if they were being discontinued from Warcry as well, or only from Age of Sigmar. But if they're not, it would go with my theory that they're trying to take out as much of the Warcry stuff and put them back into Warcry. And only keeping the Warcry warbands that I think serve a purpose. Because one thing you have to remember is not every Warcry warband, even from Slaves of Darkness, was taken out. They're still keeping the Chaos Legionnaires. They're still keeping the Darko Savagers. It's just they don't need. They just the range probably just doesn't really need all these different little cultist war bands that kind of just compete against each other for space. Like, because again, I don't think they're going to be removing everything because again, there's still, like I said, in Slaves of Darkness, there's still the Warcry war bands. There's still going to be the other Underworlds war bands, and there's also the war bands for the other armies as well, like the Rotmire Creed for Magakin of Nurgle and those Jade guys for Disciples of Tzeentch. Those are all still staying. So again, I think this is probably less. This culling had less to do with removing older models. This one, I think, was along the lines of Slaves of Darkness. The range is already super bloated. They need to make room for future releases, and these were just the easiest to remove because again, I don't. They just didn't feel the army needed like 10 different styles of light foot infantry that basically just do the same thing. Like, yes, I know they all had their own little gimmick, but at the end of the day, they still served a similar purpose. It was less armored, lighter infantry that was for like filling out battle line and camping objectives. We don't need 9 units doing the same thing. Even if I personally don't agree with this because I loved the variety and the lore and the fluffiness of it. I think they should have personally kept them in, but I understand taking them out. Now, Beasts of Chaos I saved for last because I feel, out of everything that really upset people, I think this one was the one that was the most tragic. And I'm not to say that, the Bone Splitters players who lost your stuff, your guys hurt, your pain doesn't matter. No, no, it is valid. But out of all of them, Beasts of Chaos is unique in that this is the first time an entire army has been squatted from Age of Sigmar. Like, yes, sure, Stormcast lost Sacrosanct, but that was just a sub faction. Bone Splitters, just a faction. Um, Slaves of Darkness, all they really lost was some of their cultists, and they didn't even lose all the cultist warbands. They still have some. Beasts of Chaos, they have no fallback. Like they're just gone. Like basically, and GW even was very blatant on why they did this. They took Beasts of Chaos out of Age of Sigmar and they're just moving them to Old World. And honestly, out of everything that happened, this one was probably the one people were most sure about what was going to happen because a big theory people point out Beasts of Chaos was the only army that branched Age of Sigmar and Old World. Like it was a core army in both games, and people were pointing out, well, GW doesn't seems to be going out of its way to separate the games except for this one army. So what does that mean? Oh well, it means it's being taken out, and they were right. So why are some of the reasons for this? Well, I think one of the biggest ones was that I feel like GW I feel does want to update the range of Beasts of Chaos, but I feel like because of whatever's going on with GW, I think there's been definitely some delays going on behind the scenes, and I think there's also been some like internal leadership delegations about the direction of Age of Sigmar that I think any update to Beasts of Chaos is a long way away. And they really didn't feel like keeping the army on the burner when it's not going to get updated for a very long time. And who knows how many of the older kits they're actually moving. Like, case in point, like, so let's just do a rundown. What did get updated for Beasts of Chaos? They got a new Herdstone. They got their endless spells, which, by the way, I don't even know what they're gonna do with their endless spells because I don't think endless spells are like spells that actually manifest or even a thing in Old World. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think they might those actually I think they might just end up just getting sent to Legends, and they updated the Beast Lord. So they it did so that's what so they and also they also had like a Underworld's warband as well. But those all got, like I said, they did get some updates, but the vast majority of the range was very old. Like it was starting to show its age. Um, so I think what they decided, I think what happened with Beasts of Chaos was that they weren't really getting a ton of money for them in Age of Sigmar, and just keeping a whole army on the roster is just an army existing costs the money. Again, like you have to pay for advertising, you have to pay for shelves on the spots on the shelf. You got to like include them in all the updates online. Like it's not a zero cost line range. So I think what they realize is that if the update for Beasts of Chaos is so far down the line, well, how about we just move them to Old World, repackage the units for that game, and we can just, and then when we do eventually get around to getting the updated models, we can just rename them and put them in Age of Sigmar. Like, I don't know if that was the reason, but I think at least on some level that was a justification. Um, Now, should they have actually cut it from Age of Sigmar? Personally, no, because I just feel that the Beast of Chaos just gave like a unique niche in as you know in for the Chaos and Age of Sigmar as a whole. I feel they were important lore wise. Like they're again, I don't know how they're going to justify this lore wise, like because they like sure they weren't the biggest thing happening in the lore, but they were there. They played a role in the overall setting. So I think what they're probably going to end up doing is they're gonna basically do like Cities of Sigmar them from second edition. Like so, Cities of Sigmar always existed, but whenever they were mentioned, it was always very abstract. Like they were always kind of like in the background. They were never really gotten a big spotlight. Or oh, you know what? Another perfect example. They're basically probably going to act like 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 Soulblight did before the update. They're just going to be a background. They'll just be background lore until they eventually get their new update, if they ever do. Um, Now this the thing is, and another thing is too. Another thing reason I don't disagree. I disagree with this is that I'm generally against squatting armies on principle. Like I feel like like if anything, what they could have maybe done is that maybe they could have just removed some of the line and just integrated them as a sub faction into another army. Like like get rid of like half the units and put them into, I don't know, maybe like integrated them with like slaves of darkness, or maybe they could have been like a slave race for like the Skaven. I don't know, like maybe I think there could have been ways to salvage this. But again, now the main and the other big reason I think this happened was because, well, again, as I've mentioned before several times now, Age of Sigmar is going through a major change up, and the big wigs at GW probably thought if we're ever going to get rid of them, this is the time. This would be the easiest time to do it. We're invalidating all the books anyway. Let's just get rid of them now, so people don't buy a bunch of books that we then just get rid of later. So they're just ripping the band-aid off. So yeah, so basically what's going to happen is these are going to be good for about a year, and then they're going to get repackaged and resold in Old World eventually. So uh, it is what it is, but let's not kid ourselves. They upset a lot of people doing this, and honestly, they kind of upset me too. Excuse me. So my thoughts overall. Well, okay, let's look at some things people are saying about why this was a bad thing. Well, one thing I'm seeing going around a lot is that in especially in the short term, cutting so many of these models and also discontinuing whole armies is really going to be bad, especially from the hobby, excuse me, the hobby and the consumer aspect of the game. Because like one big thing people have been pointing out is that GW is discontinuing models that are barely 2 years old. Like think about that. So let's just say someone bought some units or even a whole army, and a whole army of these models, and then maybe 2 3 years later, GW basically says, "Yeah, we are not officially supporting these anymore. These are done." Like what does that say to people trying to get into the hobby? Like you're kind of creating because you're kind of creating a precedent that we don't actually know how long any one particular model is going to be still supported. Like the GW has kind of created like this persona of when a model is released, it's going to be years before they're discontinued. Like case in point, like people pointed out, why are you discontinuing new models that only came out a couple years ago when you still have models on the shelves that are like 30 years old? Like where is the logic in that? And again, you don't really want to create a scenario where people are legitimately don't know how long their armies are going to be relevant. Like, okay, well, am I going to get all these models, put all the time and energy, and then just randomly GW is like, you know what? We actually don't want to support these anymore. Okay, they're gone. And then the only kind of uh recompense we get for that is like, well, we still like and support you, please buy our other ranges, or you can still blah blah, like that's not an answer. That's just them just trying to brush it away and move on quickly enough and hope people get over it. That's I don't feel that's a particularly good thing. I think that especially the newer models, you should create a certain time frame that at a minimum they should be supported. Like, I don't think any model should enter a game system and then less than 2 years later be taken out of it. Like, unless it's legitimately like business destroying lack of income coming from them, I don't think you should take those out. I think you should just, even if you're not making a ton of money from them, keep them in the game because it builds consumer confidence. uh, and especially, and on top of that too, I kind of feel like GW really isn't very good with giving out information to allay these feelings. Like, case in point right here, when Space Marines got their mass culling last year, when they basically just got rid of, I'd say, most of the older firstborn Marine Space Marines. Like, everyone was freaking out about it because they're like, oh great, my mod, like, oh great, now I have to buy Primaris because all my older Space Marines and all my tactical Marines, they're all gone now. No, sorry, not tactical Marines, but tactical Marines stayed, sorry. But all my other units are gone. Like, all my assault Marines, they just got invalidated. Like, that was half my Blood Angel army. Well, and then I think like a few days later, then they're like, oh wait, here are the Primaris updates. Well, I'm sorry, GW. I know you were trying to build hype, but I don't understand why you couldn't have just revealed that at the same day you were revealing that those were being discontinued. Like, heck, you could have done that in the same article. Just like, we are unfortunately removing these models, but we're replacing them with updated Primaris. Like, don't get me wrong, people would still have been mad, but at least there wouldn't have been this mass hysteria that happened where everyone was freaking out. Like, okay, should I just move to Horus Heresy now? Should I go play War Machine? Like, what's going on here? Am I actually getting updated models? Like, yeah, no, I don't think that's a good. I realize there's probably like a marketing reason for that, but I don't think that's a good thing to do because it almost kind of like comes off as you're like intentionally jerking your audience around a little bit. Like, okay, let's just get them all upset and get everyone talking, and then we're gonna, like, boom, here's the new stuff. Like, no, no, don't do that, because it's like I said, it makes everyone intentionally angry and it comes off as manipulative. And on top of this right here, right at the moment, especially with the new stuff with this Age of Sigmar that we're getting right now, there's no guarantee of what's going to happen in the future because, like, we don't know what's going to happen with Beasts of Chaos. Are they good? I know we're going to the old world, but are we ever getting them back? Like, what's going on with Orc War Clans? Are they just losing a bunch of models and getting nothing in return? Like, and also, again, and this is another thing people pointed out, what exactly was their reasoning for some of the stuff taken out? Like, for example, like, everyone was thinking that Cities of Sigmar was going to lose a bunch of models, but they didn't. Instead, like, Slaves to Darkness lost all their brand new, well, not all of them, but a lot of their brand new cultist units. Like, again, everything I've said in the video, these are just my thoughts and theories. Like, I don't actually know exactly what's going on behind the scenes here. Like, I feel that GW could do a better job of explaining their reasoning. Like, it's not going to alleviate people's hurt feelings, but at least it would give some context of what's going on. Because if they give context, at least people can apply that in the future. But with, like, okay, well, GW makes a point of, removing models because the range is getting too bloated, and they prioritize models that are such and such years old. Instead, right now, it kind of just feels like you're just removing models at random, and you just, every time there's going to be a new edition, everyone's going to have to be like, is my army going to survive into the new edition? Because there doesn't really seem to be much of a pattern beyond just, logical reasoning of removing older models, which, again, that's not even really just that, because they're also removing newer models. So, yeah, like, I think GW really needs to if not reveal their reasoning for removing models, at least create a kind of consistency with it so people can plan more around it. Because again, I don't think anybody saw the removal of the Sacrosanct Chamber coming. Like for Stormcast Eternals, yes, everyone thought the older first edition models were getting released, but I don't really think there was a ton of justification to pick the Sacrosanct Chamber to be taken out as well. Like that's the one that it confuses me the most. Like all the other the removals, I at least can see where they're coming from. That one, in my opinion, makes the least amount of sense. That I can only justify that they're updating the model someday. Now, getting that out of the way, were the good stuff that came out of this? Well, the good stuff is obviously just from what happened. Like, like now that we're getting a new edition, we're going to be getting a whole bunch of new kits coming for probably many armies. They need to start calling the branch, especially on the bigger ones. Like case in point, right here, yeah, Bone Splitters and Beasts of Chaos were unfortunate, but I don't think anyone can deny that Skaven, uh, Slaves to Darkness and Stormcast Eternals weren't getting too big for their britches here. Like there were like Stormcast Eternals especially. How much more can you actually add to that army before we hit like over 100 units? And again, as I mentioned before, some of those units currently available aren't actually available. Like, for example, I don't even know where you get like the Night Quester anymore. Like, I guess online, but I don't see it online that much. And again, the Slaves to Darkness, I think that just has to do with GW's current stance, especially in recent times, of wanting to separate all their game systems model ranges from each other. So that's what I think happened with there. Um, so I think in the long run, I think probably yes, they did. The culling of Age of Sigmar's model line was probably needed, but what I don't like is that I don't think they should have called so many models like so many models like the way they did, and in the same period of time. Like yes, I know we still have a year to use them, but you still revealed all the models that are getting removed, and when you reveal models that are getting removed, inevitably people are going to stop using them because they know they've got a shelf life, so people start selling them off. People stop bringing them to tournaments. Some tournaments just stop letting them be used. And then once they go to Legends, that's pretty much it. Because like GW seems to have this idea that the general community basically loves and uses Legends regularly. No, generally speaking, from what I've seen, once something comes to Legends, it's basically just an unofficial way of signaling to people, sell off your models now while you still can, or put them on the shelves and just admire them, because Legends almost never gets updated properly. So there's also that too. So I think objectively speaking, long term they made the right thing. They made the right call because the model lines were getting too big, but I feel like the handling of it and the amount of things removed was not the right thing to do. Like again, I don't think they should have taken Beasts of Chaos out completely. I think that was unnecessary, but it is what it is. So anyway, thanks for stopping by. If you were one of the people affected by this announcement, my heart goes out to you. I really feel bad about it. I don't like it. I probably don't like it as much as you do. And I don't. And again, I don't like the implications that it created. But it is what it is. But fortunately, we still have stuff to look forward to in the coming fourth edition. So I hope you enjoyed my video, and have a nice day.